Good evening, Carl, from Recording Studio Oxford. We're now going to take a quick break from the stories of Mowgli to continue with the stories of the jungle, or the other stories in the Jungle Book. This one's called The Undertakers, Part 1. When ye say to Tabaki, my brother, when ye call the hyena to meet, ye may cry full truce with Jakula, the belly that runs on 4 feet. Respect the aged. And there was a thick voice, a muddy voice that would have made you shudder, a voice like something soft breaking in two. There was a quaver in it, a croak and a whine. Respect the age, O companions of the river, so respect the aged. Nothing could be seen on the broad reach of the river except a little fleet of square-sailed wood-pinned barges loaded with the building stone that had just come under the railway bridge, and they were driving downstream. They put their clumsy helms over to avoid the sandbar made by the scour of the bridge piers, and as they passed three abreast, the hollow voice began again. O Brahmins of the river, respect the aged and infirm. A boatman turned where he sat on the gunwale, lifted up his head, said something that was not a blessing, and the boats creaked on through the twilight. The broad Indian River looked more like a chain of little lakes than a stream. It was as smooth as glass, reflecting the sandy red sky in mid-channel, but splashed with patches of yellow and dusky purple near and under the low banks. Little creeks ran into the river in the wet season, but now their dry mouths hung clear above the waterline. On the left shore, and almost under the railway bridge, stood a mud and brick and thatched stick village, whose main street, full of cattle going back to their buyers, ran straight to the river and ended in a short, rude brick pierhead, where the people who wanted to wash could wade in step by step. That was the ghat of the village of Mugga Ghat. Night was falling fast over the fields of lentil and rice and cotton and the low-lying ground nearly flooded by the river, over the reeds that fringed the elbow of the bend, and in the tangled jungle of the grazing grounds behind the still reeds. The parrots and crows who had been chattering and shouting over their evening drink had flown inland to roost, crossing the outgoing battalions of flying foxes, and cloud upon cloud of water birds came whistling and honking to the cover of reed beds. There were geese, barrel-headed and black-backed, teal, widgeon, mallard, and sheldrake, with curlews here and there a flamingo. A lumbering adjutant crane brought up the rear, flying as though each slow stroke would be his last. Respect the aged, Brahmins of the river, respect the aged. The adjutant half turned his head, sheered a little in the direction of the voice, landed stiffly on the sandbar below the ridge. Then you saw what a ruffianly brute he really was. His back view was immensely respectable, for he stood nearly 6 feet tall and looked rather like a very proper bald-headed person. In front it was different, for his ally's sloper-like head and neck had not feather to them, and there was a horrible raw-skin pouch on his neck under his chin, a hold-all for the things that his pickaxe beak might steal. His legs were long and thin and skinny, but he moved them delicately, and looked over them with pride as he preened down his ashy grey tail feathers, glancing over the smooth of his shoulder and stiffened into standard attention. A mangy little jackal who had been yapping hungrily on a low bluff cocked up his ears and tail and scuttled across the shallows to join the adjutant. He was the lowest of his caste. Not that the best of jackals are good for much, but this one was particularly low, being half a beggar, half a criminal, a cleaner-up of the village dumps, desperately timid or wildly bold, everlastingly hungry and full of cunning that never did him any good. A mangy little jackal, who had been yapping hungry on a low bluff, cocked up his ears and tail and scuttled across the cliffs to the shadows to join the adjutant. Oh, would it be that? Ugh, he said, shaking himself dolefully as he landed. May the red mage destroy the vogues of this village. I have 3 bites of each flea upon me, and all because I only looked, mind you, at an old shoe and a cow buyer. Can I eat mud? He scratched himself on his ear. I heard, said the adjutant, in a voice like a blonde saw going through the board, I heard there was a newborn puppy in the same shoe. To hear is one thing, to know is another, said the jackal, who was a very foreign knowledge of proverbs, picking up by listening to men round the village fires one evening. Quite true, so to make sure, I took care of that puppy while the dogs were busy elsewhere. They were very busy, said the jackal. Well, I must go not to the village, hunting for scraps in a while. And was there truly a blind puppy in that shoe? It is here, said the adjutant, squatting over his beak and his full pouch. A small thing, but except now that charity is dead in the world. Aye, the world is iron in these days, wailed the jackal. Then his restless eye caught on the least possible ripple in the water and went on quickly. Life is hard for us all, and I doubt not that Inks and Master, the pride of God and the end of the river, a liar, flatter, and a jackal, all hatched out of the same egg, said the adjutant, to no one in particular, for he was a rather fine sort of liar on his own account when he took the trouble. Yes, envy of the river, the jackal repeated, raising his voice. Even he, I doubt not, finds that since the bridge has been built and good food is more scarce. But on the other hand, I would no more see this noble face, he is so wise and virtuous, as alas I am not. When the jackal owns he is grey, how black must the jackal be, muttered the adjutant. He could not see what was coming, that his food never fails, and in consequence. Now there was a soft grating sound, as though a boat had touched on a shoal of water. The jackal spun round quickly and faced, it is always best to face, the creature he had been talking about. It was a 24-foot crocodile, cased in what looked like treble-riveted boilerplate, studded and keeled and crested, the yellow points of his upper teeth just hanging over his beautifully fluted lower jaw. It was a blunt-nosed mugger of Mugger older than any man in the village, who had given his name to the village. The demon of the ford before the railway bridge came, murderer, man-eater, and local fetish in one. He lay with his chin in the shadows, keeping pace by an almost invisible rippling of his tail, and well the jackal knew by one stroke of the same tail in the water would carry the mugger up the bank with a rush of steam like engine. Auspiciously met, protector of the poor, he fawned, backing at every word. A delectable voice was heard, and we came with hopes of sweet conversation. My tailor's presumption, while waiting here, led me, indeed, to speak of thee, so my hope nothing was overheard. Now the jackal had spoken just to be listened to, for he knew flattery was the best way of getting things to eat, and the mugger knew that the jackal had spoken to this end, and the mugger knew that the jackal knew that the mugger knew, and so they were all very contented together. The old brute pushed and panted and grunted up the bank, and mumbling, "Respect the aged and infirm," and all the time his little eyes burned like coals under heavy, horny eyelids at the top of his triangular head, as he shoved his bloated, barrel-like body between his crotched legs. Then he settled down, and accustomed as the jackal was to his weight, he could not help staring, for the 100th time, when he saw exactly how the mugger imitated a log adrift on the bar. He had even taken pains to lie at the exact angle a naturally strangled log would make when the water, having regard to the current of the season at the time and place. All this was only a matter of habit, of course, because the mugger had come ashore for pleasure, but a crocodile is never quite full, and if the jackal had been deceived by the likeness, he would have not lived to philosophize over it. "My child, I heard nothing," said the mugger, shutting one eye. "The water was in my ears, and I was also faint with hunger. Since the railway bridge was built, my people at my village have ceased to love me, and that is breaking my heart." "Ah, shame," said the jackal, "so noble a heart too, but men are all alike to my mind." "Nay, there are some very grave difference indeed," the mugger answered gently. "Some are lean as boat poles, others fat as young as dogs. Nevertheless, never would I causelessly revile men. They are of all fashions, but the long years have shown me that, one with the other, they are very good. Men, women, and children. I have no fault to find with them. And remember, child, he who rebukes the world is rebuked by the world. Flattery is worse than an empty tin can in the belly, but that which we have just heard is wisdom," said the adjutant, bringing down one foot. "Consider, though, then, ingratitude this excellent one," began the jackal tenderly. "Nay, nay, not ingratitude," the mugger said. "They do not think for others, that is all. But I have noticed, lying at my station below the ford, that the stairs of the new bridge are cruelly hard to climb, both for old people and young children. The old, indeed, are not so worthy of consideration, but I am grieved. I am truly grieved on account of the fat children. Still, I think in a little while, when the newness of the bridge is worn away, when we shall see my people's bare brown legs bravely splashing through the ford as before, then the old mugger will be on it again." "But surely I saw marigold leaves floating off the edge of Ghaut only this noon," said the adjutant. "Now marigold leaves are a sign of reverence all over India, Carl." "An error, an error. It was the wife of the sweetmeat seller. She loses eyesight year by year, and cannot tell a log for me, the mugger of the Ghaut. I saw a mistake when she threw the garland, for I was lying at the very foot of the Ghaut, and she had taken another step, I might have shown her some little difference. Yet she meant well, and we must consider the spirit of the offering." "What good are marigold wreaths when one is on a rubbish heap?" said the jackal, hunting for fleas, but keeping one wary eye on his protector of the poor. "True, but they have not yet begun to make the rubbish heap that shall carry me. 5 times I've seen the river draw back from the village and make new land at the foot of the street. 5 times I've seen the village rebuilt upon the banks, and I shall see it built 5 times more. I am no faithless fish-hunting Gavia. I, at Kasi today and Priag tomorrow, as the saying is, but the true and constant watcher of the ford. It is not for nothing, child, that the village bears my name, and he who watches long, as the saying is, shall at last have his reward. I have watched long, very long, nearly all my life, and my reward has been bites and blows," said the jackal. "Ho, ho, ho!" roared the adjutant. In the August the jackal was born, the rains fell in September. Now such a fearful earth as this, says he, I can't remember. Okay, Carl? This story is a bit different from the others, so until tomorrow, love you to pieces.